In the dimly lit depths of a cavernous dungeon, water dripped steadily from the ceiling, echoing through the silence. A party of adventurers and warriors trudged forward, their faces etched with exhaustion and despair. They moved with heavy steps, clearly worn down by the trials they had endured. One of the warriors suddenly collapsed to the ground, prompting several of his comrades to rush to his side. Some among them quietly wondered how many of their companions had already been lost. As they helped the fallen warrior, one of the party members voiced concern that the healers were nearly out of mana. Despite his injuries, the warrior insisted he was fine, managing a weary smile. He reminded them that they carried with them the hope of the Empire. From the shadows emerged the hero of the party, his figure shining faintly with a mystical glow. A grim expression darkened his features as he assessed the state of his companions. He remarked that if they still had the strength to speak, then they must still be able to fight. Inwardly, the hero clenched his teeth, haunted by the memory of those they had lost. He reflected bitterly on the fact that 31 of their comrades had fallen during the raid. Only 41 had survived. Yet he reminded himself that every one of them had known the risks and accepted their fate the moment they stepped into the dungeon. As he stood lost in thought, surrounded by floating orbs of light, someone called out to him, addressing him as Sir Byrne, and urged him to look toward a part of the cavern where a faint light was visible. Byrne turned and stared in disbelief, struggling to accept what he saw. He thought that perhaps, at last, they had reached their destination. Drawn to the light, the party approached what appeared to be a colossal door. Byrne believed they had finally reached the heart of the ancient ruins, the end of their long and harrowing journey. When they pushed open the door, they were greeted by a breathtaking sight. A vast chamber filled with mountains of gold, sparkling gems, and treasures beyond imagination. And at the far end of the room, towering above it all, stood a magnificent throne, crafted entirely from gold. A seat worthy of an omnipotent being. The hero, Byrne, considered the possibility that if fortune favored them, they might even uncover the greatest legacy of humanity, the legendary 36 virtuous masterpieces. Yet, despite the awe-inspiring treasures before them, a deep unease settled in his chest. He feared that this very throne room could be where the dungeon's master lay in wait. Without warning, the ground trembled violently beneath their feet, and debris began to rain down from the ceiling. Alarmed, Byrne immediately shouted for his party to get into formation. He ordered the swordsmen and shield-bearers to the front lines, while commanding the magicians to summon light, knowing that visibility was now their top priority. In response, one of the mages conjured a glowing orb that rose above them, casting illumination across the chamber. Cries echoed among the party, urging everyone to stay alert. As the magical light flooded the room, it revealed a terrifying presence lurking ahead. A monstrous being slowly emerged from the darkness, its eyes glowing. One radiant gold, the other pitch-black. Byrne, bracing for battle, couldn't believe what he was seeing. Above them, a maw of colossal, jagged teeth opened as if preparing to devour the entire chamber. The entire party stood frozen, paralyzed by fear. Someone finally broke the silence, screaming for everyone to run. Elsewhere, in a darker corner of the dungeon, a skeletal warrior stood before the very monster that had attacked the party. He questioned the creature with irritation, asking why. Humans had been allowed to enter the dungeon in such large numbers, while the monster had been asleep. The skeletal warrior pointed out that even in his exhausted state, the monster had still chosen to fight, and clearly had done considerable damage to the intruders. The skeleton tried to confirm the details, and the monster admitted that yes, he had indeed faced many human foes despite being fatigued. At that, the skeletal warrior grew visibly angry. A dark aura began to swirl around him, radiating his fury. The monster, sensing the change in mood, asked the skeleton to calm down. But the skeletal warrior refused. He demanded to know how the boss monster of the dungeon could afford to fall asleep while enemies advanced right to his doorstep. He criticized the monster's carelessness, asking how he could yawn in the very presence of the enemy. Turning away from the monster, The skeletal warrior looked toward a young girl in a maid outfit, standing nearby. Her name was Renee. With an exasperated tone, he asked her what she thought of the entire situation. Renee, the maid girl, told the skeletal warrior that she wasn't sure what to make of the situation. After a brief pause, she remarked that the monster had managed to overwhelm the human intruders with nothing more than a yawn. With a pleased smile, she added that she was once again astonished by the sheer grandeur of the creature, whom she respectfully addressed as Lord Swallow. Both, the skeletal warrior and the dungeon boss, stared at her in disbelief, stunned by her calm admiration in the midst of chaos. The skeleton, caught off guard, could only think to himself that perhaps it was time to give up entirely. Then, suddenly and without restraint, he shouted in frustration, declaring that the entire dungeon was doomed. Trying to ease the tension, the dungeon boss turned to the skeleton and advised him not to stress too much, joking that too much worry might be bad for his bones. Meanwhile, outside the dungeon, the entrance to a massive cave stood silently under the weight of ancient magic. It was known to the world as one of the 7 malevolent dungeons, locations deemed by humankind to be impossible to conquer. Collectively, they were known as the cores of the ancient. In ancient times, humans frequently raided dungeons, and in most cases, emerged victorious. They slaughtered every beast and monster they encountered, growing bolder with each conquest. However, as the raids became more frequent, the dungeons themselves began to weaken, or so humanity believed. Then came a turning point in history, a period marked by the emergence of dungeons unlike any encountered before. These were not mere lairs of creatures to be conquered, but vast, terrifying realms filled with unimaginable threats, fierce and extraordinary. These dungeons resisted every attempt at conquest. Humanity came to know them as the malevolent dungeons, more precisely, the 7 malevolent dungeons. Each of the 7 was home to powerful monsters and formidable boss-level beings. Recognizing the futility of their efforts, humanity was forced to place these dungeons under indefinite suspension. They were deemed impossible to conquer. Among the infamous 7, one stood out as the most diabolical. It was guarded by legions of monstrous defenders, each more powerful than the last. 3 distinct paths led deeper into this dungeon, and each was watched over by a terrifying guardian. The left path was protected by a homunculus known as the Blade Maid, Renee. The central, glowing blue path was guarded by a skeletal death knight named Patrick. As for the right path, shrouded in filth and chaos, no information had ever been recovered. It was only known that an uncountable number of tentacles guarded its gate. At the heart of this impenetrable fortress resided its ruler, an ancient, mighty being known only as Swallow. As she gently closed the book, the maid explained that such was how the story had been written. She added that, after spreading these tales among humans on Lord Swallow's orders, the number of intruders had begun to rise dramatically. Lord Swallow expressed satisfaction upon hearing the latest information. He told the maid, Renee, that they couldn't afford to shroud themselves in too much mystery. Otherwise, humans would stop entering the dungeon altogether. He explained that they needed to release just enough information to make humans believe they understood the dungeon, just enough to lure them in like moths to a blazing flame. He admitted that he hadn't expected the humans to arrive in such overwhelming numbers. Reflecting on the carnage, he thought about all the intruders who had been eradicated, their bodies and gear reduced to nothing. He informed Renee that most of the human raiders' equipment had been destroyed, melted down by the 116 tentacles patrolling the dungeon corridors. Only a few pieces remained intact, and those were too rare and costly to be practical. Clutching the book to her chest, Renee told the dungeon boss that had she been assigned the task instead of the tentacles, she would have retrieved the equipment without damaging it. Lord Swallow looked at her, and with a faint nod, admitted that she was probably right. Suddenly, thick black miasma began to swirl around the boss. From within a dense ball of dark aura, a radiant golden eye emerged, glowing ominously. A hand reached out through the shadows, and from the darkness stepped a young, handsome boy. He gently placed his hand on Renee's head in a gesture of reassurance and offered a soft smile. From nearby, the skeleton knight Patrick watched with glowing blue eyes, his tone laced with mockery. He asked whether they were gathered for a strategy meeting or just to flirt and play around. Without waiting for an answer, he burst into laughter, joking that the atmosphere between the boss and the maid was so sweet it might give him a cavity. Patrick then looked at the boy and asked if Lord Swallow was attempting a proper polymorph transformation this time. The boy glanced at his own body and realized, with a tinge of confusion, that he had 6 hands instead of 5. The skeleton knight laughed even harder, reminding him that it was still an improvement compared to the last time, when he had somehow ended up with over 40 teeth. Renee, clearly irritated, scolded Patrick for making fun of the boss. As the group gathered for the actual meeting, Renee reported that the humans had finally begun advancing down the right path, one they had long ignored. However, during the process, a complication had arisen. One of the 116 black tentacles assigned to guard the right path had sustained a serious injury and was now in critical condition. The young boy, still seated calmly, reassured both Renee and the skeleton knight not to worry. He explained that the tentacles possessed extraordinary regenerative powers and would likely recover in due time. In the meantime, he suggested they could either monitor the path themselves or assign a new guardian to take over. Without hesitation, the skeleton knight interjected, asking if the boy could go ahead and find 2 more guardians, because he was ready to quit. The boy responded flatly, reminding him that he had no such luxury. He was bound in eternal servitude. Changing the subject, the skeleton warned that the humans might soon organize another subjugation party. Renee chimed in, informing the group that the humans had used communication spells, and it was very likely that news of the right path being opened had already spread. At that, the boy slammed his hand against the table and declared that it was time to take countermeasures. He announced that they would be reassigned to new posts. Turning to Renee, he told her that since she had been guarding the red path up, until now she would be relocated to the right path instead. He explained that when the humans advanced and noticed Renee guarding the right side, they would assume the path was either heavily defended or still unguarded. Both scenarios would serve their purpose. Renee nodded in agreement, ready to fulfill her new role. Then the boy addressed Patrick, instructing him to guard the red path in Renee's place. Patrick, clearly displeased, questioned why he was being moved. The boy explained that once the humans detected Renee's presence on the right path, they would likely reroute toward the red path. Having Patrick there would serve as a perfect trap. Still skeptical, the skeleton asked what they would do if the humans chose the center path instead. The boy paused for a moment, then admitted he hadn't considered that scenario. With a smirk, he added that if the humans dared take the central path, they'd be walking straight into a personal encounter with him. Patrick grumbled that it was a terrible plan, but Renee's eyes sparkled as she clutched her book and declared it to be absolutely perfect. With that, she said the most pressing issue had been resolved. However, one matter still remained: the swords. The boy raised an eyebrow and asked what swords she meant. The skeleton answered instead. He referred to the weapon carried by the leader of the human subjugation party. With disbelief in his voice, he said he still couldn't comprehend the kind of sword the humans were now using. The skeleton knight remarked that the humans they had fought were surprisingly strong. The boy narrowed his eyes and asked again, more insistently this time, "What sword?" In response, the skeleton pulled out the weapon he had recovered and held it up for everyone to see. He explained that it was one of the 36 virtuous masterpieces, legendary weapons well known among humanity. He believed the one in his possession was the 14th of the set, and that its name was Tanabella. At that moment, Lord Swallow's expression shifted as he recalled the ancient relics. He said he now remembered the 36 masterpieces, and pointed out that the blade currently used by the young maid, Renee, was also one of them. He commented aloud that the humans had brought some very interesting weapons into the dungeon. The skeleton knight suggested that the boy should take Tanabella for himself, considering its value. However, the boy shook his head and told the skeleton to keep it. After all, he reasoned, the skeleton actually used swords in combat, so it would be more practical in his hands. Delighted, the skeleton grinned and said that if it was an order from the boss, he'd gladly accept the gift. Across the room, Renee observed the exchange, her expression shifting to one of jealousy. She couldn't help but pout at the fact that the skeleton knight had received such a valuable gift from their master. The boy noticed her reaction, but turned back to the skeleton. With a sly smile, he added that, since the sword was now officially a gift, the skeleton should also tear up the resignation letter he was hiding inside his ribcage. While the skeleton admired his new sword, the maid turned to the boy and asked, calling him Mr. Devourer, what they should do with the remaining spoils left by the humans. Devourer told Renee that they could use as much as they needed and save. The rest is bait for the next wave of humans. Renee then began explaining the distribution process to him once again. She mentioned that they had no use for the magic tools and asked if they should extract the mana stones and sell them instead. Hearing this, Devourer told Patrick and Renee that, if that was the case, he would go visit the human village himself. His statement shocked both Patrick and the maid. Seeing their reaction, Devourer asked why they were so surprised. Patrick hesitantly suggested that it might be better if the maid went instead. This suggestion startled Renee even more. Devourer then asked Patrick, the skeleton, for his reasoning. Patrick explained that Devourer was terrible at disguising himself as a human. With a sigh, Devourer relented and told Renee to go instead, instructing her to buy plenty of delicious treats. Under the clear blue summer sky, Renee exited the dungeon, commenting on how pleasant the weather was as she made her way to the village. Upon arriving at a shop in the human village, she tried to sell the mana stones. However, the shopkeeper regretfully told her that he couldn't purchase them. With a chilling gaze, Renee asked him why. The shopkeeper reached under his counter and pulled out a blue mana stone, explaining that it was a B-ranked stone. He said that for a commoner like himself to buy even a single B-ranked stone, it would take 10 years of hard labor. He then added that the mana stones Renee had were all far more radiant than his, indicating they were of an even higher rank. Such stones, he explained, could only be used by the mage tower or the royal family. He advised her that if she wanted to sell them, she would need to go to the capital or directly to the mage tower. Renee thought to herself that the capital was too far. She didn't want to go there, but if it was for Mr. Devourer, she would. Resolute, she left the shop. As she stepped outside, the shopkeeper noticed something. "Wait!" he called out, holding up a small crystal. "You forgot one of the mana stones." Renee turned slightly, her voice calm as she replied that it was a tip for the information. She added a quiet, human, before walking away. The shopkeeper watched her go, scratching his head as he muttered, "Strange kid. Is she even human?" Soon, Renee stood before the towering structure of the mage tower. As she entered, a few mages inside informed her that to sell mana stones, she would need to speak with the guildmaster. She nodded and simply said, "Okay." One of the mages offered to escort her. As they guided her through the halls toward the guildmaster's office, Renee observed the surroundings and silently noted how much the tower resembled a dungeon. When they arrived, the guildmaster greeted her with a polite smile and thanked her for making the long trip. He introduced himself as Graumitz Amer, the head of the Wing Mage Tower Guild. He then asked for her name. While he spoke, Renee sensed that he possessed a considerable amount of mana. She introduced herself as Ren. Graumitz admitted that he had initially planned to ignore her when he heard a child had come, but the guards had insisted. Apparently, the child was carrying a significant number of mana stones. He told Ren he hoped she had brought high-rank ones that would meet the guild's standards. Without hesitation, Ren dropped the mana stones before him and told him to confirm their quality for himself. Graumitz's eyes widened in surprise as he examined the stones. Each one radiated powerful energy. Internally, he acknowledged that they were all A-rank mana stones, rare and highly valuable. He couldn't help but think to himself, items like these shouldn't be in the hands of someone so young. The guildmaster asked Ren where she had acquired the mana stones. As he spoke, he caught a glimpse of her hair and momentarily froze in surprise. Inwardly, He noted that only one of the Empire's 8 noble families was known for their hereditary silver hair. He wondered if one of the daughters had run away and come here in secret, perhaps bringing the mana stones to avoid drawing attention. He began to suspect that Ren was a noble lady, one likely naive about the ways of the world. With that thought in mind, the guildmaster calmly offered to purchase the mana stones. He proposed 50 ounces of gold per stone, and 80 ounces for those in especially good condition. Ren's expression sharpened. She questioned the offer of 50 ounces, addressing the guildmaster as human, and warning him that if he was joking, it might cost him his life. Taken aback, the guildmaster was stunned by her sharp tone. He had assumed she was inexperienced, but now he realized she was far more aware than he had thought. He explained that the guild didn't currently have enough funds to buy all of the mana stones. Ren simply told him to buy as many as he could. 2. Show transparency. The guildmaster brought out a small crate filled with gold and informed her that the guild had a total of 2,000 gold coins. Then, after a brief pause, he added that if she was willing to give him all the mana stones, he would offer her something worth far more than money. Ren eyed him cautiously and asked whether the item was truly as valuable as he claimed. The guild master assured her it was and told her to come with him. He added that while it was uncommon for outsiders to be allowed where he was about to take her, he was willing to make an exception for her. The guildmaster explained to Ren that they were now in the tower's storage room. He showed her a tiara crafted from diamonds and mana stones, then presented a living pearl that would emit a cry whenever poison was near the wearer. He explained that the pearl was created using alchemy. Ren was both shocked and skeptical by the display. Noticing her reaction, the guildmaster asked what was wrong. To reassure her, he then revealed a glowing red stone, which the tower master called the Scarlet Love Stone. He told Ren that it was a gem capable of helping to fulfill one's love. Ren's eyes sparkled with excitement as she looked at the gem. The guildmaster explained that by infusing mana in front of the person she loved, the spirit within the gem would aid her in securing eternal love. Seeing how much she liked it, Ren told him she wanted the gem. The guildmaster hesitated, admitting that he was unsure if he could give it to her, as it was incredibly valuable. Powerful enough, he said, to steal the heart of even the emperor. Ren's expression grew angry as she asked what if she traded another item she had for the gem. The guildmaster was stunned when he saw the item she held. Curious, he asked how she had come to possess such a remarkable object. Without hesitation, Ren told the guildmaster he could keep all the gold and the weapon in exchange for the gem. She firmly stated that she wanted the gem. Someone called out for the guildmaster, and a young man wearing glasses soon appeared. He questioned the guildmaster about how he could consider giving away the gem. The guildmaster asked why not. The young man warned him that he should know the true nature of the gem, and that Ren would definitely die if she used it. The guildmaster dismissed the concern, saying it was just an item a foolish noble lady desired. He reassured the young man not to worry, explaining that once Ren died, the person she loved would also die, leaving no evidence behind. Meanwhile, at one of the 7 great dungeons, a female barber was cutting Ren's hair. The barber remarked that the ends were quite dead. Ren apologized for arriving unannounced, but the barber told her it was natural for neighbors to help each other. The barber expressed happiness at seeing how cute Ren looked after the haircut. She confessed to being jealous that Ren was a homunculus, as her beautiful face would never age. Ren complimented the barber in return, saying she looked young and pretty too. The barber admitted she used many potions every day to maintain her beauty. Ren called the barber Miss Battery and asked what she thought of her. Battery responded that Ren was the most beautiful woman she had ever seen, and assured her that no one would ever reject her. Battery then asked Ren, addressing her as Renee, whom she was trying to impress. She wondered if Ren was preparing to confess her feelings to someone. Ren held the gem up in front of a mirror. Meanwhile, at the royal capital inside the dungeon raid headquarters, a man asked if they should assume that the warrior Vern raid force had been annihilated. Another man shouted that there was no way. Yet another said the raid party should have easily gotten past the gatekeeper. Some of the men questioned how they could be sure the raid party had been annihilated since no corpses had been found. They insisted there was no way Sir Vern could have died. Meanwhile, back at one of the 7 dungeons, Renee told Bathory that the man she liked ate like a pig, was lazy, quite big, and always sleeping. Bathory was surprised by her words and asked if Renee really liked a man like that. Renee confirmed that she did. Bathory expressed hope that things would work out for Renee, but added that she thought Renee was too good for him. She told Renee that if he rejected her, she should come to her. Renee thanked Miss Bathory and said she would definitely succeed as she held the gem in front of her chest. Smiling, Renee said she was going to confess. Bathory looked confused and told Renee she was joking, asking who she was going to confess to. Renee replied that it was Mr. Devourer. Bathory was surprised, shocked, and confused. She asked if Renee was joking and whether it was because Renee was a homunculus. Renee assured her she was serious and was indeed going to confess to Mr. Devourer. Bathory then asked what Renee liked about him, pointing out that he was a bastard whose strengths were hard to pinpoint. Renee insisted that he had many strengths and was reliable. Bathory hesitantly agreed and said she guessed he was the most reliable, but added that his laziness somewhat counteracted that reliability. Meanwhile, back at the royal capital, a man asked if they should gather their forces and end things. One of the men thought to himself that they had already lost one of the 36 masterpieces and a warrior cherished by the royal family. If they failed again, they would all be killed. However, if they did nothing, the royal family would surely turn their blades against them. He also wondered whether Sir Vern had managed to inflict a serious wound on the ancient monster. At that moment, someone stepped in front of one of the men and declared that it was impossible to attack the Primordial Core. Most of the group hesitated, uncertainly. Then, a slow footstep emerged from the shadows, and a voice said how intriguing it was, questioning why the men thought it was impossible. The figure from the shadows insisted that it was definitely possible. The group leader asked why the royal mage from the academy was present. The mage replied by asking if the leader did not know who the academy took orders from. The leader suspected that the royal family had already begun to intervene. The mage then explained that their presence meant the men had to pay for their sins. He said that 4 foolish men had caused the death of a precious warrior and the loss of one of the emperor's treasured masterpieces inside the enemy's nest. As he placed his hands on one of the men, he warned that if all of them died, there would be no one left to manage the empire's countless raid forces. Because of this, the Mage Academy had made an offer to His Majesty, a solution to save the Phi group. The mage informed them that they would raid the Primordial Core again. When the group leader asked how they could succeed when even Sir Vern had failed, he thought to himself that everyone would be killed again. It had been 2 days since they had heard from the hero and his group in the dungeon. Sir Vern was probably dead. The group leader asked the mage what had happened to the Hishutalt family sword. The mage explained that their communication had been cut off before they even entered the dungeon, making it impossible to retrieve the 14 masterpiece Tanabella. Some of the men insisted they needed to hurry and re-enter the dungeon. A man with a ponytail argued that they couldn't afford to sacrifice more people, especially since even the hero Vern had failed. Another insisted they could not give up, believing Sir Vern must have fought the monster fiercely and dealt it significant damage. One of the mages thought to himself that they would definitely succeed in the next raid. Meanwhile, deep within the dungeon, Devourer was seen walking tiredly while yawning. He sneezed and remarked that he sensed something ominous. He sneezed again, this time so forcefully that rocks flew everywhere, and he transformed back into the boss monster, Swallow. He wondered if he was coming down with a cold. Back in the royal capital, the mage shouted the name Nifrim to the group, announcing that they would send Nifrim. The group was shocked. The leader asked if the mage was referring to the problematic product. The mage quickly corrected them, saying that Nifrim was not a failure but an undeniable success. Slamming his hand on the table, the mage posed the problem. Why had Sir Vern and his raid force failed to emerge alive from the Primordial Core? He questioned whether it was due to weakness or sloppiness, but dismissed both reasons. Instead, the mage said that Sir Vern and his force had been missing a crucial factor, just one. At that moment, something gleamed from the shadows. Devourer collapsed onto the floor, exhausted from patrolling the dungeon. He muttered that he didn't want to continue anymore, yet admitted he couldn't be sure when the humans would invade again. He remarked that if he skipped patrol again, Patrick would surely scold him. For a mere bag of bones, he thought, Patrick was surprisingly scalery. Reluctantly, Devourer got back on his feet, determined to avoid any more nagging. He told himself that the humans had last come from the area near Filth Road. That would be his next destination. Eventually, he found himself standing before the tentacled guardian of the Primordial Core. A sense of pity stirred in him as he looked upon the creature, but he knew there was nothing he could do for it now except wait. He proceeded to the guardian's main body and observed it carefully. As long as it retained mana, he reasoned, it would regenerate on its own. He felt a surge of relief that it was still alive. After checking on it, he jumped off the main body and landed on the floor below. His thoughts turned to the structural damage. Rooms 1 through 4 were completely destroyed. He told himself he needed to discuss the situation with Patrick soon. With a yawn, he said he'd think about the rest later and decided that he should rest for now. He figured that checking Filth Road and Room 5 would be enough for the moment. He reassured himself that he had done a decent job and that Patrick would understand. With that, he concluded the patrol would be fine. Just as he began walking away to get some sleep, an attack came from the shadows. A blade nearly struck him. An ominous voice rang out, calling him a filthy human bastard. Startled, he turned around to find Rihanna, who immediately apologized. She explained that she thought he had been another human invader. Devourer told her it was fine. When he commented on how she had dressed up, she smiled, pleased that he had noticed. He asked her if something special was going on, noticing that she wasn't in her usual maid uniform. He wondered to himself if she was trying to quit before Patrick. Renee responded that he was right. It was something special. She then asked if Devourer could spare her a moment of his time. Devourer thought to himself, please, anything but a letter of resignation. She led him to a secret place and with a smile welcomed him in. She asked him to have a seat while she prepared tea. As she served it to him, he silently hoped again that she wasn't about to hand him a resignation letter. Renee told him that the place was her little secret, known only to her, but now shared with Mr. Devourer. As she began to speak, he braced himself once more, dreading what she might say. She told him that it had been 80 years since Devourer had taken her in, and she asked if he remembered. He replied that he did. He recalled how, 80 years ago, dungeon clearing had gained popularity, with thousands of dungeons being conquered, and over 1,000 humans making it to the core. It was during that time that Renee's status had risen rapidly. Devourer remarked that she had endured a lot and asked if her right eye was feeling any better. Internally, he thanked the heavens that this still wasn't a resignation. Renee said she was happy he remembered her eye. Devourer told her that he had always kept it in mind. She responded by saying she was glad she could protect him. That comment made him panic. He immediately asked what she meant by was glad. Were those parting words? Then, without hesitation, she told him she liked him. The confession pulled him out of his anxious spiral. She explained that she had liked him for the past 80 years and had been waiting for the right moment to say it. Devourer thanked her for the confession, but reminded her that their lives were constantly in danger. He said they never knew when they might be injured or killed. Renee admitted that she had expected that kind of answer. She said she knew it was a heavy thing to lay on him, and that the fear of rejection had been eating at her. But she simply couldn't hold it in anymore. As she pulled out the red gem, she told him that she had always wanted to be loved by Mr. Devourer. Angrily, she kicked the table away, holding out the gem and declaring that she was willing to resort to despicable measures to achieve it. Devourer told her to calm down. She insisted that with the gem, her wish would be fulfilled. Shocked and furious, Devourer began to transform, demanding to know what she had done to him. Renee became scared, not understanding what was happening. Furious, Devourer asked if she had been trying to kill him. Then, He knocked the gemstone from her hand. It fell to the floor and broke into 2 pieces. She began to cry, confused and wondering what was going on. Patrick, glowing and smiling happily, told Devourer that he was the best boss. Not only did Devourer drive humans away, but he also managed to chase Renee away. Patrick explained that his kick did not discriminate between friend and foe. Devourer asked Patrick how he could fix the situation, and Patrick replied that it was not entirely Devourer's fault as he smashed the remaining red gem. He told Devourer that whatever the boss had done to him was the boss's fault. Devourer said he couldn't remember what happened, so Patrick asked if he should help him recall the events. A flashback revealed that Patrick had rushed in to save Renee just as Devourer was about to attack her. Patrick told Devourer to calm down and called out to him. Patrick wondered what had happened, while Renee wondered what she had done, not realizing she had used a cursed object. Patrick told Renee to pull herself together and leave the situation to him, thinking she was not in the right state of mind. He feared she would just get in the way and attacked her, sending her flying. Seeing this, an angry Devourer asked Patrick if he had come to kill him too. Patrick asked Devourer if Renee still did not remember what had happened. Devourer apologized, and Patrick told him it was okay because he understood why Devourer had acted that way. Devourer then asked Patrick if he should go and find Renee. Patrick told Devourer that Renee was very important to their dungeon, from sourcing food and cleaning to healing and setting traps. He said that Renee practically ran the dungeon. Patrick told Devourer that Renee's absence would be far more crippling than Devourer's own. Devourer replied that he was aware of this. Patrick then urged Devourer to find Renee before it was too late, emphasizing that even if he had to bow, beg or grovel, or even kiss her feet, he needed to bring her back. He instructed Devourer to take the bracelets with him, explaining that one of the bracelets helped with mana stabilization and that it was quite expensive. Patrick added that his own body suffered from strong mana backflow, so the bracelet should at least prevent Devourer from seizing up while polymorphed. However, he warned Devourer not to misuse the bracelet, as it was not very sturdy. Devourer assured Patrick that he would figure out how to use it properly. He also promised to leave the dungeon under Patrick's care during his absence. Patrick stressed that Devourer needed to return within 5 days, as the humans would be coming back soon. When Devourer asked if this was before the raid force arrived, Patrick confirmed it was. He admitted that he didn't know what might happen if the raid force reached the throne room while Devourer was gone, so 5 days was the safest bet. Devourer acknowledged this and then transformed his clothes, declaring that he would bring Renee back. Patrick cautioned him not to draw any attention in the human village. With a wicked smile, Devourer told Patrick that if everything went wrong, he would simply destroy the human village. Patrick, to himself, thought that things were more complicated than he had expected. By the end of Chapter 5, Devourer was lying in the middle of a large crater outside the dungeon.